Hi everyone, my name is Avram K and you're watching Alfei Panim Parshas Eikev 2026. The Torah tells us, "V'amarta bilvavecha koichi v'oitzam yadi osa lias achaya lazeh." And you'll say in your heart, "My power and the might of my hand has gotten me this wealth." These psukim are so familiar that it's easy to flatten them, to kind of go right past them. We hear koichim v'oitzam yadi and imagine the Torah warning a person who did nothing and still claims all the credit. But that would not be much of a warning. If a person sits still and says, "I built all this," or "I did all this," that's not a profound spiritual crisis, that's just a delusion. The Torah is addressing something far more subtle and far more common. It is speaking to the person who actually did act. He worked hard, he planned carefully, he took risks. He made the calls, he traveled the miles, he signed the papers and carried the burden. And now he looks at the result and says, "Koichi v'oitzim yadi, osa lias achaya lazeh." My work and my effort did this. That is already a much more serious nisayon because it contains a kernel of truth. The Sefer Panim Parshas explains that Hashem certainly has the power to provide a person with parnasa and success without any effort at all. But if that were the regular pattern, then bracha, blessing, would come through open miracles, and that is not the way Hashem prefers to run the world. Chazal teach that a person should not place himself in a position of needing open miracles because such a life brings a person under special divine scrutiny. So Hashem arranged the world differently. A person is meant to do a ma'aseh mu'at, a small act, a limited act of hishtadlus, of effort, and then the bracha rests upon that act. The effort is real, but it's only a vessel, a kli. The success is real, but the source is Hashem. The deed forms the vessel, and then the blessing fills it up. That is the balance the Panim Parshas sees in these psukim. Yiddishkeit does not preach passivity, but neither does it permit a person to confuse the servant with the master. And now we can understand the Torah's warning. The danger is not that a person will imagine effort where there was none. The danger is that once he has done his little bit of effort, he will begin to overread it. The vessel will start to feel like the source. That is why the pasuk says, "V'amarta bilvavecha," and you will say in your heart. The problem begins in the inner narrative. Outwardly, the person may still say all the right words. He may say Baruch Hashem, but in his heart, the story has shifted. He no longer sees himself as the recipient of a blessing. He sees himself as its producer. And that is much more dangerous because it can live quite comfortably inside a religious language. Modern psychology gives us a helpful lens here. Researchers speak of the endowment effect or the IKEA effect. The tendency of people to value something more highly once they own it or help create it. Once I build it, I no longer see it neutrally. Once I invest myself in it, it takes on extra value in my eyes simply because some of me is now inside of it. In many contexts, that is beneficial. It creates attachment, responsibility, care. People tend to value what they help build. That is part of what makes parents devoted and craftsmen proud of their work and communities invested in what they create. But the same mechanism can also distort perception. Labor does not only lead to love, it can lead to overvaluation. Once I have invested in something, I may no longer judge it clearly. I do not just appreciate my role, I inflate it. In other words, involvement changes perception. That is what makes the Panim Parshas so striking. Long before psychology gave us a modern vocabulary for these biases, the Torah was already warning us about the spiritual version of the same human tendency. Hashem wants us to engage with the world. He wants us to think and to plan and to build. But he also knows that once a person is involved in producing an outcome, that very involvement can make him overcredit himself for the result. The act was supposed to remain a vessel, a kli. But in the person's imagination, it swells into causality itself. This means the Torah is not only teaching theology here, it is also teaching anthropology. It is teaching us something about how the human being works. The moment I participate in something, I am tempted to misperceive it. My small contribution, even if it's not small to me, begins to loom large simply because it was mine. And of course, this is not only about money, it applies to nearly every area of life. A person raises a family and slowly begins to think he is engineering souls. A Rav prepares a shir and begins to imagine he is manufacturing Torah. A Baal Chesed helps others and begins to feel that he is the indispensable pillar on which the whole world rests. A person works on his midos and starts to take credit not only for the effort, but for the siyata d'shmaya, the heavenly assistance that allowed the effort to bear fruit. Then the sign of kaichi v'oitzem yadi appears anywhere a person's legitimate participation can expand into imagined authorship. That is why this warning is so timeless. The Torah is not telling us not to act, it is telling us not to worship our own action. This also deepens the next pasuk, V'zacharta es Hashem Elokecha, ki hu hanosein lecha koach la'asos chayil, and you shall remember Hashem, for He is the one who gives you the power to get wealth. The Torah is not merely saying that Hashem gave the final product, it is saying that even the koach to make the vessel, to make the kli, the strength, the intelligence, the opportunity, the stamina, the timing, the health, the clarity of mind was all itself a gift. The hand with which I worked was given to me. The mind with which I planned was given to me. The opening through which the bracha entered was also given to me. So even when I truly acted, I still remained from beginning to end a recipient. That awareness does not weaken hishtadlus, it purifies it. A person can work hard without becoming arrogant. He can take responsibility without claiming authorship. And he can build a kli, a vessel, without mistaking it for the spring from which the water came. Perhaps that is the avodah of these psukim, to act seriously but not self-worshipfully, to engage the world fully but never forget who makes our efforts fruitful, to understand that hishtadlus is necessary but also dangerous, not because effort is wrong, but because effort can be intoxicating. In a world that constantly trains us to maximize and optimize and congratulate ourselves and to reward ourselves, the Torah reminds us that the deepest illusions are often built on a partial truth. Yes, I acted. Yes, I worked. Yes, I built the vessel. But no, I did not create the bracha. May we all be zeicha to do our hishtadlus with diligence and honesty and responsibility, while never losing sight of its proper proportions. To recognize when our involvement is beginning to distort our perception, and to remember, in success no less than in struggle, that all true bracha comes only from Hashem. Have a wonderful Shabbos. My name is Avram Kay, and you're watching Alfei Panim.